Hey guys, it's Max. Today I'm talking about the brand new Sony A7R2. I heard from a couple sources that this is the most pre-ordered camera ever. That's because it's a spec monster. This is the first affordable 4K camera that has a full frame sensor, records 4K internally. It also has a high resolution full frame backside illuminated sensor and in-body image stabilization, along with a bunch of other features. If you guys want to see the full specs of this camera, you guys could follow the first link in the video description to check those out. I've used this camera for about a month now. I was able to take it to one wedding for wedding photography, 3 weddings shooting wedding films, as well as 1 video commercial shoot, and of course around the house and with the family. Even though I have a fairly good usage with this camera, I do wish I could use it a little bit longer to dig deeper into the extra functionalities that it does have. But of course, if you guys read the title, you'll know why I can't do that. I'm going to be sending this camera back to where I purchased from really soon, and I'll talk about the reason why a little bit later in the video. I do want to mention, guys, if you want to download some photos and or video from my testing and my usage, you guys could check out a link in the video description where you're able to do so you could check out that footage for yourself. To start off with build quality, I could definitely say this thing is built solid, as it should for the price tag. It is weather sealed coated magnesium, so the build quality is good, and when you hold this compact camera in your hand, it still feels like a professional camera. It doesn't feel like something small and cheap. I do want to mention that the coating on here has started to wear off on me, and that's because of all the sharp edges. If you have anything that's rubbing against a sharp edge, just like with other products, it's going to wear a lot easier than if the edge is kind of like a smooth curve or like a flat surface, something like that. Now, I take pretty good care of my cameras and my other equipment, and I have cameras that I've had over a year that don't have as much wear as this camera has in 1 month. So make sure if you're having a camera bag that's not touching any of your lenses or anything else if you want to keep it in pristine condition. I have medium-sized hands, and this camera does feel pretty good when I'm holding it. It is really compact, and I have just enough grip between the lens mount and the grip here on the side for my fingers to rest in. If you have larger hands, you might not have enough room there. Of course, if you have small hands, this camera's probably going to feel really nice in your hands, but if you have large hands like I mentioned, you're definitely going to want to purchase the battery grip. That's going to let you be able to lower your hands down a little bit, give you a little bit more room there. And I want to say that if you're coming from a full-size camera like a D810 or a 5D Mark III, this thing's going to feel really tiny for you. Of course, it's a full-frame camera and a really tiny body. That's kind of their main goal. Ergonomically, I can reach most of the buttons pretty well. This little scroll wheel in the front did take a little getting used to instead of having it up top, so the finger's a little bit cramped. So I would say before taking this out on any paid shoots, definitely make sure you have some good time behind it to get used to the controls and having a little bit more of a compact system with all the buttons. If you're a fan of electronic viewfinders, you're gonna love the one on this camera. It's really, really big. Yeah, I could say huge, and the quality is great. I can't say for sure if it's the best one. It's definitely the best one that I've used, and it probably is the best electronic viewfinder. I really, really enjoyed using it. If you're somebody that's resisted electronic viewfinders, this may be the one that converts you. I do want to say that even though the electronic viewfinder is fantastic, the eye cup, I found it to be a little bit lacking. It's a little bit short, so when I put it up to my eye, I still have a bunch of light leaking from the sides. So if you're outside in bright daylight, that can be a little bit annoying. Of course, they want to keep the body small. They don't want it sticking out too much, and this isn't really a big issue because, of course, you can buy an aftermarket one to fit your eye better. The flip out LCD screen on the back is not bad for photos, but it's not great. I wish it was a little bit better. If you're doing mainly photos, it's gonna do the job because you're typically just using the EVF and maybe just changing your settings or reviewing your photos on the LCD screen. Also, if you're doing photos, you can change your brightness manually, and you can also put it into like a daylight sunny mode, which really kicks up the brightness and contrast. It's great for shooting outdoors. The problem is if you're shooting video, it's kind of tough to do manual focus because the screen isn't very sharp compared to other cameras, at least that I own, and the brightness gets knocked down dramatically as soon as you hit that record button. It gets a lot darker, and the contrast goes down as well. So you're looking at the LCD screen, it looks like you're underexposed if you're just judging off the screen, but if you're viewing your histogram, you're actually overexposed. So it takes a while to get used to that, and if you're shooting a live event, especially outdoors, it makes it so tough because you don't have the time to set up proper lighting. Stuff's going so fast. You want to be able to trust the LCD screen on the back, and it's much harder compared to my other cameras. I'm not sure why this is happening. Maybe it's something that firmware can fix, but I did hear from a couple people, maybe it's because of the small battery. It can't provide enough juice for the system to be able to power that 4K recording and have the LCD screen brightness up as well. Maybe it's just something for battery saving measure. I'm not sure. This camera does get about 45 minutes of recording time in 4K with the in-body image stabilization turned on, about an hour with it turned off. Maybe that's a reason, but I'm not sure. I definitely wish they gave us an option to use it the way it was intended. I haven't had any cameras that work the same way, so that's definitely a downfall for me. One subject that I realized is not popular to talk about is touchscreens. My other videos where I mentioned it, a lot of professional users kind of flame me for mentioning touchscreens at all. Honestly, I've used a lot of professional level cameras that don't have them, and now that I'm used to cameras that do, I really want every single camera to have a touchscreen. You can always shut it off in the menu, and it just makes things a lot easier to navigate the menu, change settings, and especially choosing your focus point. My old 5D cameras, you had a joystick that you can quickly select your focus point while shooting. You don't have to go into menu systems. And on a touchscreen, you can quickly just touch exactly where you want. This makes it harder, and I really wish it had that functionality. A lot of people say, why do we need it? Our pro level cameras haven't had it. But that's like anything. Before the internet, people didn't know they needed the internet or wanted the internet. Before your cell phone, before your car, whatever. You know, time progresses, and it's good to adapt new things. Of course, like I said, you can shut it off. So I really wish this did have a touchscreen. I'm going to talk about the menus soon, and it would make it easier to be able to touch exactly what you want instead of going through dials. So that's my opinion. I really wish this thing did have a touchscreen, especially for the price tag. Mentioning the menu system, I also wish this was improved. Sony is known for not having very good menu systems. There's so much options, and they're not laid out very well. You know, they can keep the menu system the way it was, at least reorganize some of the stuff. For example, if you're going into your Super 35 mode, which is going to be popular for filming because it's more detailed than the full frame mode, I really wish they'd place that right next to your other options where you select your bitrate and your resolution, stuff like that, instead of having going over to a completely different tab and scrolling through those menus to get to the page where it's at. Another thing is the in-body image stabilization. Another feature that people are going to access. Place that right next to your video, not in a complete different section. So I wish it was organized a little bit better. I think it'd just give a better overall experience for this camera. Getting into photos, I want to say that I absolutely love using this camera for photos. I did make a video called the 5 downsides or problems with this camera, and many people thought I just hated this camera, even though in the beginning I said this is a great camera. I love using this camera for photos. I'll say it again for you guys. It's great having a small camera like this. After a 10-hour shoot, your arms and your hands aren't sore, your back isn't hurting from having a strap with a huge full-size DSLR with the flash on it, stuff like that. And especially if you're traveling or going out with the family, you're gonna probably want to take one of these cameras instead of having something that's, you know, twice the size or triple the size and triple the weight. So for photos, I really enjoyed my time with this camera. The image quality of this camera is great. You have so much detail and the dynamic range is awesome. Like you guys see from this wedding I shot, the lighting at times was not good at all. And if I was using my old Canon camera, a lot of these shots would have to get thrown away. Thanks to the dynamic range of this sensor, those shots can become usable, and I can actually use it and give it to the clients. So it's really great to be able to have so much recovery of those shadows, and the noise doesn't just explode. It's controlled really well. And you also see the detail that this camera is able to provide. Of course, the sensor is absolutely awesome. So I really have nothing bad to say about the quality of the images. They're amazing. One thing that I did notice though is the meter is a little bit off, at least what I'm used to. It would show that I'm a little bit underexposed, and then I would overexpose slightly, or I'd expose up to the proper level, and my images would be a little bit overexposed compared to, once again, to what I'm used to. So I would suggest make sure you spend some time testing out the camera. If you're new to the Sony system, if you're used to a different system, make sure the metering works for you. You can also adjust the brightness of the EVF. if that's going to help you out. I can't say too much about low light performance because I never had to bring up the ISO too high with this camera and the lenses that I used. Now, based off of other reviews, this camera does slightly worse than the 36 megapixel D810, which makes sense. And it does slightly better than the new high resolution shooter, the 5DS, which has above 50 megapixel sensor. That also kind of makes sense. This camera does have the in-body image stabilization, which allows you to get lower shutter speeds, but I do mainly portrait photography, so I tend to keep my shutter speeds higher anyways, so actual vibrations or handshake doesn't matter as much for me because I want to freeze that motion. But for a lot of people, for photos, that's definitely going to be useful. As far as autofocus, the camera did a really great job in good lighting conditions. It was really fast and really accurate. Of course, when the lighting started getting worse, the accuracy went down just a little bit, and that's typical of basically any cameras, but especially these mirrorless cameras. They tend to do a little bit worse in autofocus compared to standard DSLR type setups. Overall, I want to say that I am thrilled with this camera as a photo shooter. If you mainly do photography, buy this camera. I mean, like right now, go to the link in the video description, check it out and hit buy. You will not be disappointed. I am very, very happy. As you guys could tell, the camera is fantastic for photos. Let's talk about video. This is where my review is going to go a little bit south. If you can't tell, my main focus of my business has shifted towards video. I still do a little bit of stills, but it's definitely mainly video based. Now, a lot of professional photographers have commented on my videos and saying, who cares about video? This camera is all for photos. Obviously, that's not true. Sony is putting a huge marketing push on the video, and this camera has more video features than any other A7 lineup to date. So it's definitely marketed heavily in the video department. Now, if you are a video shooter, you'll definitely know how big of a splash this camera made when it was announced. Any forum or group that I was a part of could not stop talking about this camera after the announcements. It's definitely geared towards video, no doubt about that. Now, I pre-ordered one of these about 20 minutes after it was announced. I have multiple 4K cameras, but my biggest downfall of those cameras is low light performance. I really wish they did better. That's where a full frame sensor comes in. It does definitely do better than those cameras, but unfortunately, like I mentioned before, like the title says, I cannot keep this camera. The video low light performance of this camera is definitely an improvement over my other cameras, especially in Super 35 mode. In full frame mode, it didn't do as well as I would have thought it would do. So if you want to see my comparison between this camera in both modes, as well as two other 4K shooters, check out a video on my channel. It's definitely interesting to watch. Now, as far as video autofocus, this camera does do better than the GH4, but it doesn't match up to the NX1 or Canon's dual pixel autofocusing systems. The camera just isn't as smooth focusing, it doesn't track as well, and it doesn't kind of lock on focus and stay on focus as well as other cameras. It tends to randomly hunt. It's definitely an improvement over the other A7 series cameras and a huge improvement over DSLR style cameras like a 5D Mark III, but there's definitely much room to grow and improve based on other cameras that we see like the NX1. Now, you may be thinking, why do you need video autofocus? Who cares? You're a professional, use manual focusing. I've been using manual focusing for years, but there are specific times where video autofocusing is very nice to have, at least if it works properly, like on the NX1. A couple great video features is the in-body image stabilization, which lets you have IS if you're using prime lenses or non-native lenses. Of course, the S-Log2, which will maximize your dynamic range and help you with color grading. And that you can use at 800 ISO now instead of 3200 like on the A7S. And lastly, I want to mention proxy recording. Now, proxy recording will give you a small 720p low bitrate video file along with your high resolution file. This is great if you have a less powerful computer. It allows you to take those 720 files, edit them, cut them, do whatever you want to them, and then when you're exporting, you can plug in your high-res files and export. So that really helps you to more easily edit on older computers, on less powerful computers like laptops. And I do want to mention that the XAVC codec, the 4K one, does take a little bit more power than the 4K footage from the GH4 that I'm recording on right now, and that already takes, you know, a decent amount of computer power. So that proxy recording definitely comes in handy. Now let's talk about the big issue, which is overheating. Based on my testing and usage, this camera, when you're shooting in 4K, overheats about at 15-minute mark on average. Now, other reviewers have mentioned this issue as well, and listening and reading through commenters on my YouTube channel, a majority of them have had this issue as well. One interesting commenter said that he took his new A7R2 on a freezing shoot outdoors, and he also took the RX10 II, which shoots 4K, and his Red Dragon 6K out all at the same time. Both the Red Dragon and the RX10 II had no issue shooting 4K for as long as he wanted. The Sony A7R2 did overheat, and that's in freezing temperatures. So it's not just limited to high temperatures. If you're shooting indoors, it still has the issue. Of course, if you're shooting outside in higher heat, it's going to overheat even faster. So that's definitely a huge problem. Turning off the in-body image stabilization as well as opening up the LCD screen does extend recording time a little bit, but it still overheats. My guess is because of the in-body image stabilization, which the sensor has to move around in there, you can't attach a solid heatsink to it, so it gets a lot hotter. And because of the compact body, that heat can't expand or kind of get out of there as well. Now, because of that, we're having these overheating issues, and the A7S was said to not have internal 4K recording because of heating issues. So now we have proof that this is really the truth behind that. There's also rumors coming out that the A7S II is going to be in a larger body to fix this issue. Because of this overheating issue, I have not been able to use this camera as my A camera. It's either been my B or even C or D camera. The last time I used it was at a wedding about a week ago, and I used this as basically my D camera. It was my fourth camera, and all I wanted it to do was to sit there and record for 20 minutes. I did all the precautions, turned off the in-body image stabilization system, I opened up the LCD screen all the way, and I was just give me 20 minutes to record the ceremony. I came back after the ceremony, and the camera was shut off. Now, I looked at the clip length and it was 16 minutes and 4 seconds long. Luckily, I had 3 other cameras on the job, so I'm not messing up any client's footage, but this overheating issue is really making this camera unreliable. I can't take it on professional shoots, and I did leave it at home on multiple occasions, especially if you're following some of the Facebook groups I'm in, you'll know. I want to take this camera out to shoot, but I can't because it's going to overheat on me. If you guys are following somebody like Dave Dugdale, he put out a low light video where he did an interview, and in the description he said that during the 30-minute interview the camera overheated 3 times. Now, even though this was just kind of a for fun shoot, it was still kind of awkward telling people, hey, stop, pause, hold on for a second, I gotta fix my camera. And if you're on a paid shoot, this is something that you cannot afford to do. You can't afford risking your camera working or not working. You need a camera that's gonna do the job. And if this thing is basically a 4K shooter, that's what it's marketed to be, you're paying the price to have a full frame sensor, 4K internal, it doesn't do the job, it's unreliable. To sum up this review, if you're a photographer and this camera meets your needs and you have the money, if your wallet agrees as well, buy this camera, no doubt about it. I'd appreciate if you guys use the link in the video description. That helps me make more videos like these. But I want to say you're going to love this camera. I absolutely think it's fantastic. And if I did mainly photos, I would no doubt be using this exclusively as my, my main photography camera. It's great. On the other hand, if your focus is video, and like I said, this camera is geared towards video as well, do not purchase this camera. Basically, everybody I've talked to has had issues with the 4K overheating. So what I would say is wait till the A7S II comes out, which should hopefully solve these issues. So it's tough that it's having this problem. It was the most pre-ordered camera ever, and I'm sure a lot of these are being sent back just like mine is. Hopefully this video has been helpful to you. If it has, give me a thumbs up, or if you guys enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, you guys can ask in the comments section below. Once again, if you want to download some sample photos or video, you can check out the link in the video description to my website where you can do so. And if you want to see the specs or purchase one of these cameras, just check that first link in the video description. So thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more videos like this one, you guys can hit that subscribe button and check out my other videos on this camera. I have a detailed test compared to 2 other 4K cameras. I have a full frame versus a Super 35 mode comparison. I have that low light comparison. I have an autofocusing comparison. So some really great content out there that you guys might be interested in. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.